They signed the papers while I was still alive. That was the thought echoing in my head as I stared at the pale yellow ceiling above my hospital bed, listening to the steady beep, beep, beep of a machine that didn't care whether I lived or died. My children had already decided, and they did it without asking me. Before we begin, dear listeners, if you enjoy real-life stories about betrayal, karma, and the moment someone finally chooses themselves, please subscribe to this channel. It helps stories like mine reach people who need them. Now, let me tell you how my own children tried to erase me. I used to believe that if you sacrificed enough, your children would love you more. I was wrong. My name is Eleanor Whitmore. I am 72 years old. I spent 45 years working as a school librarian in a quiet Midwestern town, saving every extra dollar, skipping vacations, wearing the same winter coat until the lining tore. I told myself I was building security. What I was really building was bait. The first sign came disguised as concern. "Mom, you've been tired lately," my daughter Rachel said, sitting at the edge of my hospital bed, her voice syrupy sweet. "You fainted. That's serious at your age." I hadn't fainted. I slipped on wet tiles while mopping my own kitchen floor. But facts had never mattered much to Rachel when drama worked better. My son Daniel stood behind her, arms crossed, eyes fixed on his phone. He nodded occasionally, like a man agreeing to terms he had already accepted. "We're just worried," he said. "You shouldn't be alone." That word, alone, landed like a sentence. 2 days later, a woman in a beige suit walked into my hospital room carrying a clipboard. "Mrs. Whitmore," she smiled professionally. "I'm from Willow Creek Senior Living. Your children contacted us." My stomach dropped. I hadn't contacted anyone. Willow Creek sounded gentle, peaceful. In reality, it was a place people were sent when they became inconvenient. They called it assisted living. I knew the truth. It was a waiting room. "You'll have regular meals," Rachel chirped. "Activities. Nurses. Isn't that better than struggling alone?" I wanted to ask her when she had last visited me before the accident. Or when she had last brought groceries. Or when Daniel had called without asking for money. Instead, I looked at the stack of papers on the table. One page caught my eye. Power of attorney. Temporary. My hands began to shake. "What is this?" I asked. Daniel finally looked up. "It's just paperwork, Mom. In case something happens." Something already had. They discharged me straight from the hospital to Willow Creek. No stop at home. No chance to collect my things. No time to think. Rachel packed a single suitcase for me. Mostly old clothes. Nothing valuable. Nothing personal. When I asked about my house, she smiled. "We'll keep an eye on it." That smile haunted me. Willow Creek smelled like disinfectant and boiled vegetables. My room was small. Clean. Empty. A bed. A chair. A window facing a brick wall. "This is temporary," Rachel said, kissing my cheek. "Just until you're stronger." She didn't mean physically. The first night, I lay awake listening to strangers cough through thin walls. I thought about my house. The oak dining table my husband built with his own hands. The antique clock in the hallway. The jewelry box tucked behind winter coats. Things Rachel used to say, "One day, this will all be mine." I finally understood. On the third day, a man sat beside me in the common room. He was well-dressed. Calm. Observant. "You don't belong here," he said casually, sipping tea. I laughed bitterly. "That's what they all say." He shook his head. "No," he replied. "I can tell. You're not confused. You're not broken. You're just inconvenient." I studied him carefully. "Who are you?" "Thomas Hale," he said. "Financial advisor. Volunteer." That was my first stroke of luck. Over the next week, Thomas and I talked. Carefully. Quietly. He listened as I told him everything. The fall, the papers, the sudden concern, the rushed decisions. When I finished, he leaned back. "They're planning to liquidate your assets," he said simply. I felt my chest tighten. "My house. First," he nodded. "Then whatever else they can access." "But they can't," I whispered. "I didn't sign." He smiled. "Not yet." That word again. That night, I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding. I realized something terrifying. If I stayed quiet, if I stayed obedient, if I stayed grateful, I would disappear. Not tomorrow. Not next week. But piece by piece. The next morning, I asked to use the phone. Rachel answered on the third ring. "Mom," she said, surprised. "Everything okay?" "Yes," I replied calmly. "I'm ready to cooperate." I could hear the relief in her breath. "Good," she said. "That's best for everyone." She had no idea. Because that afternoon, Thomas slid a thin folder across the table. "Before we talk about what they're taking," he said quietly, "we need to talk about what they don't know you still own." My fingers tightened around the folder. And that was the moment I stopped being a victim. The folder Thomas slid across the table looked ordinary. No gold seal. No dramatic label. Just a thin manila cover. But the moment I touched it, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. "Before you open it," Thomas said calmly, lowering his voice, "I need you to understand one thing." I looked up at him. "Your children believe they know everything about your finances. They don't." He paused. "And that mistake is going to cost them." Inside the folder were copies, not originals. Bank statements, trust documents, investment summaries. My heart raced as I scanned the pages. "This can't be right," I whispered. Thomas smiled slightly. "Oh, it's very right. Years ago, long before Rachel started sniffing around my jewelry box, long before Daniel began asking casually about the house, I had made one decision that saved me. After my husband died, I didn't trust grief. I trusted paperwork. I sold a small piece of land my father had left me. Not enough to make headlines. Enough to make a plan. Instead of keeping the money in my main account, the one my children knew about, I did something simple. I listened to my lawyer. Separate visibility from ownership, he'd said back then. People can only steal what they can see. So I created a revocable trust. Quiet, boring, invisible. Rachel never asked about it because it didn't sparkle. Daniel never noticed because it didn't pay monthly. "They think the house is everything," I said slowly. Thomas nodded. "They're wrong." The trust held. A diversified investment account. A secondary savings reserve. And one more thing that made my breath catch. A commercial property I had quietly invested in 15 years ago. Leased. Profitable. Growing. Rachel had once laughed when I said I was looking into investments. "You're too old for that, Mom." I smiled at the memory. "Your power of attorney," Thomas continued, "is limited, temporary, and conditional." He tapped the document. "They rushed it. They wanted speed, not precision." I felt anger rise, but also something sharper. Opportunity. "But they can still sell my house," I said. "Yes," he admitted. "If you do nothing." I leaned forward. "What if I don't?" That's when Thomas said the sentence that changed everything. "Then we move faster than they do." Over the next 3 days, I became invisible. I stopped asking questions. Stopped complaining. Stopped resisting. Rachel called daily. "Are you settling in?" she asked. "Oh, yes," I replied sweetly. "Everyone's been so kind." Daniel texted. "Doctor says you're stable." "Good," I replied, feeling better already. They thought obedience meant surrender. It didn't. Meanwhile, Thomas worked. Quiet phone calls. Secure emails. Documents prepared but not signed. And then the final piece. "The house," he said gently. "We need to talk about timing." My chest tightened. That house wasn't just walls. It was my life. "They want to sell it," I said. "I know they do." "Yes," he replied. "But they don't know you can still decide how." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He slid another document toward me. A listing agreement. And signed. "If you sign this," he explained, "you choose the agent. The conditions. The restrictions." I stared at the page. "And if I don't? They'll try to force it. And that gets messy." Messy scared me. But something else scared me more. Being erased. I picked up the pen. Then I stopped. "Thomas," I said quietly, If I do this, there's no going back, is there? He met my eyes. No, he said honestly, but there is justice. That night, Rachel called again. Her voice sounded excited. We're thinking of renovating before the sale, she said. Just minor things. Renovating my house. Already spending my money. I smiled into the phone. That sounds lovely, I said. Do whatever you think is best. After we hung up, I signed the paper. The next morning, the listing went live. But not the way my children expected. Not at the price they wanted. Not with the timeline they planned. And most importantly, not with them in control. 3 hours later, Daniel stormed into Willow Creek without calling. His face was pale. Mom, he said sharply, why did a realtor call me saying the house isn't available for a quick sale? I looked up from my tea. Oh, I said calmly. That's strange. He swallowed. What did you do? I met his eyes for the first time in weeks. Something you forgot, I replied. I remembered who owns it. Daniel didn't wait for permission. He pulled the chair back and sat down hard, his knee bouncing uncontrollably. I noticed it immediately. That nervous habit he'd had since childhood whenever things slipped out of his control. This isn't funny, Mom, he said. I stirred my tea slowly. I'm not laughing. You listed the house wrong, he snapped. The agent says it's restricted. Long closing period. No investor offers. No quick cash. I looked up at him calmly. Oh, I said, pretending to think. I must have misunderstood something. His jaw tightened. You did that on purpose. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I saw fear in his eyes. Rachel arrived an hour later. Perfect hair. Perfect coat. Perfect smile. Cracked just enough to let panic leak through. She hugged me too tightly. Mom, she whispered. Why didn't you tell us you were doing this? Doing what? I asked. Making decisions without us. The irony almost made me laugh. They sat across from me, like lawyers preparing a case. We were just trying to help you, Rachel said. You're not well. You're vulnerable. I tilted my head. Vulnerable people usually don't make smart financial moves, I replied. So, why are you so worried? Silence. Daniel leaned forward. You don't understand how real estate works, he said slowly, as if explaining something to a child. You could lose money. I smiled. That's interesting, I said. Because the agent says the price reflects market value, not desperation. Rachel's fingers clenched around her purse. Who is advising you? She demanded. I met her eyes. A professional. Her face darkened. That afternoon, Thomas visited again. They're rattled, he said quietly, which means they're going to push harder. How? I asked. He hesitated. By questioning your competence. The words settled heavy in my chest. The next day, it happened. A nurse knocked gently on my door. Mrs. Whitmore, she said, your daughter has requested a cognitive evaluation. I closed my eyes. Of course she had. The doctor was polite, neutral, thorough. Memory tests, logic puzzles, questions about dates, names, money. Rachel sat in the corner pretending to care. Daniel watched the clock. I answered everything calmly, correctly. 2 hours later, the doctor folded his hands. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, you are fully capable of making your own decisions. Rachel's smile collapsed. Daniel stood abruptly. That can't be right. The doctor raised an eyebrow. It is. That night, Rachel didn't call. Instead, something else happened. Thomas arrived with urgency in his voice. They've contacted the lawyer who handled your temporary power of attorney, he said. They're trying to extend it. My heart pounded. Can they? Only if you agree, or if they prove incapacity. I clenched my fists. So they're not done. No, Thomas said. They're desperate. I thought of every sacrifice I'd made. Every bill paid late so Daniel could go to college. Every check written so Rachel could keep up appearances. And now this. What do we do? I asked. Thomas didn't hesitate. We counter. He slid a new document across the table. This revokes temporary authority, he said. And this one formally appoints me as your financial representative. I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake this time. The next morning, Rachel called. Her voice was sweet again, too sweet. "Mom," she said softly, "we should talk." "Yes," I replied. "We should." She exhaled in relief. "I'll come by tomorrow." I smiled to myself after hanging up. Tomorrow, everything would change. Rachel arrived the next morning exactly on time. That alone told me everything. She was dressed carefully, neutral colors, soft makeup, the version of herself she used when she wanted to appear reasonable, caring, responsible, dangerous. "Mom," she said warmly, stepping inside my room at Willow Creek, "you look better." "I feel better," I replied honestly. Daniel wasn't with her. That was intentional. She sat down slowly, folding her hands in her lap like a mediator. "I think things got misunderstood," she began. "We all want what's best for you." I nodded. "So do I." Her smile twitched. "I spoke to a lawyer," she continued. "He agrees we should simplify things. Less stress for you." She slid a folder onto the table between us. "This just keeps everything stable. Temporary. Routine." I looked at the folder. The thickness was wrong. Too heavy for routine. Thomas had prepared me for this. "Never sign anything they bring you," he had said. "Read everything they don't want you to read." "What's this one?" I asked, tapping the top page. "Oh," Rachel said quickly. "That's just acknowledgement. Nothing changes." I opened it, and there it was, buried beneath polite language and legal padding. Consent to extended authority. Indefinite duration. My breath stayed steady. Rachel watched my face carefully, waiting for confusion. She didn't get it. "This would give you full control," I said calmly. "Well," she smiled, "only so we can help you." "And the trust?" I asked casually. Her eyes flickered. "What trust?" I closed the folder gently. Rachel leaned forward. "Mom," she said softly, lowering her voice, "you're tired. You don't need to manage these things anymore." I looked at her, really looked, at the daughter who once cried when she lost her first tooth, at the woman who now wanted my signature more than my safety. "I already signed something yesterday," I said. She froze. "You what?" I tilted my head. "A legal document." Her face drained of color. "With who?" she asked quickly. I smiled. "Someone independent." Rachel stood up too fast. "You shouldn't be making decisions without us," she snapped, the mask slipping. "This is exactly why. Why you tried to declare me incompetent." I finished calmly. Silence slammed into the room. She straightened herself, forcing a laugh. "You're being dramatic." I pressed the call button beside my bed. Thomas walked in moments later. Rachel's eyes widened. "Good morning," Thomas said pleasantly. "Ms. Rachel Whitmore, correct?" She nodded stiffly. "I'm Eleanor's appointed financial representative as of yesterday." He placed a document on the table.
Signed. Filed. Sealed.
Rachel stared at it. "That's not possible." "It is," Thomas replied calmly, "and legally binding." Her voice shook. "You tricked me." "No," I said quietly. "You underestimated me." Rachel grabbed her purse. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You don't know what you're doing." She walked out without another word. Thomas exhaled slowly once the door closed. "She'll escalate," he said. "Daniel too." "I know," I replied. He met my eyes. "Then it's time for the next move." That afternoon, the phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. A man's voice spoke coldly on the other end. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, "I'm calling regarding a petition filed this morning concerning your mental fitness." My grip tightened. Rachel had struck back. Hard. The next morning, the air felt heavier than usual. Every step I took in the house echoed with possibility. Rachel had left a storm behind, and Daniel's absence wasn't reassuring. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Thomas sat across from me, a small stack of folders between us. "They'll try another angle," he said calmly. "But we're ready." I nodded. "I want everything documented. Every call, every email, every slip they make. This time, I will not be caught off guard." By noon, Rachel's messages had started. Short, sharp, demanding.
Threats. Please.
Offers. I ignored them all. I had learned a lesson long ago. Fear is a weapon, but knowledge is armor. Then the call came. Mrs. Whitmore, the voice said politely, almost mockingly. We need you to review your mental fitness evaluation documents. I smiled, putting down the phone. Let them come, I said. I have everything they don't want me to have. That evening, I walked through the empty halls of Willow Creek. The house had always been a sanctuary, but now it felt like a fortress. Every corner held proof, every room a witness. I stopped by the large bay window overlooking the estate. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood orange and gold. Some battles aren't loud. Some victories are quiet. I sipped my tea, feeling the weight lift. Rachel and Daniel could scheme, argue, try to intimidate, but the truth, the law, and preparation were on my side. And for the first time in years, I felt untouchable. Later, Thomas placed a single envelope in front of me. No words were necessary. The presence of that envelope said it all. One small action, one document, and the game was over. They would never see me coming. They had no idea how far I had prepared, how carefully I had built every step. I opened it. Inside was a note, perfectly concise. Victory is quiet. Watch them realize it too late. I leaned back, letting the tension drain. The sun disappeared completely behind the hills. Night fell over Willow Creek. Peace had returned. Outside, the world continued, unaware of the quiet reckoning that had taken place inside. And inside me, a calm certainty settled. This was not a battle fought in fury. This was a battle won in silence. And sometimes, silence speaks louder than screams.